The crack of the rifle split the cold Colorado air, but the shape that crashed through the underbrush was no elk. My dad's best friend Ray lowered his gun slowly, his face going pale, as we both realized we had nearly shot a man. That single moment on the ridge above Durango changed everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, and the life I was supposed to live. I was 24 years old and still trying to be the son my father expected. Dad owned Thompson Construction, the biggest outfit in our small town outside Durango. Every Sunday we sat in the same pew at First Baptist. Every holiday we talked about me marrying Sarah, who I had been dating since high school because that was what good sons did. But inside my chest there was always this quiet ache I could never name out loud. I told myself it was stress from work or pressure from Dad. I never let myself look too closely. Ray Harlan had been Dad's hunting partner for 30 years. He was the kind of man who could field dress an elk before breakfast and quote scripture while doing it. When Dad got too busy with a big contract, he told Ray to take me up to the family cabin for opening weekend of elk season. Do the boy some good, Dad said. Get his head straight. I did not argue. I never did. We drove up the winding dirt road in Ray's old Ford, the heater rattling against the November chill. Pine trees pressed close on both sides, their branches heavy with fresh snow. Ray talked the whole way about responsibility and providing for a family and how a real man knows his place in God's order. I nodded and stared out the window, wondering why every word felt like it was aimed straight at the secret I kept locked behind my ribs. We reached the cabin by late afternoon. It was the same rough-hewn log place I had come to since I was a kid. We unloaded gear, built a fire, and checked our rifles. The plan was simple. Up before dawn, glass the ridges and fill the tags. Simple until the next morning when everything went wrong. We had been hiking for 2 hours when I heard the cry. Not an animal sound. A human sound, raw with pain. Ray and I looked at each other, then moved fast through the trees, rifles ready. What we found was a man sprawled in the snow, his left leg twisted at a bad angle and his backpack scattered like someone had thrown it. He was maybe 26 with dark hair and eyes that looked straight through me even while he was grimacing in pain. Help, he said, his voice hoarse. I slipped on the rocks up there. Been here since yesterday. Ray knelt beside him, checking the leg with practiced hands. Compound fracture. Bad one. We got to get him back to the cabin. The stranger's name was Jordan Hale. He told us he was a freelance writer and photographer from Seattle, out here chasing a story about wilderness solitude. His rental car was parked miles away at a trailhead, and his phone had died 2 days ago. He had no one expecting him for another week. We rigged a makeshift stretcher from branches and my coat. The hike back took 3 brutal hours. Jordan bit back groans every time we slipped on the icy ground. I kept glancing at his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the way sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cold. Something in my chest tightened that had nothing to do with the weight we were carrying. By the time we got him inside the cabin, the sun was already dropping behind the peaks. Ray built the fire high while I boiled water and found the first aid kit. Jordan lay on the old couch, his face pale but his eyes alert. When our gazes met again, I felt it like a physical jolt. I looked away fast, my hands suddenly clumsy with the bandages. Ray was all business. We'll splint it best we can and get you down the mountain tomorrow. Cell service is spotty up here, but the ranger station can send a chopper if the weather holds. Jordan managed a weak smile. I owe you both. Seriously. I thought I was done for. I stayed quiet. I could not stop noticing the way his voice sounded when he thanked us, or the quiet strength in his eyes even while injured. That night, while Ray snored in the loft bedroom, I sat by the fire, feeding logs into the flames and stealing glances at Jordan, who had finally fallen asleep under a pile of blankets. For the first time in years, the ache in my chest had a name, and it terrified me. The next morning, the storm hit. Heavy snow came down in sheets, blotting out the ridgeline and making any descent impossible. Ray cursed under his breath and checked the radio. No signal. We were stuck for at least another day, maybe 2. Jordan's leg was swollen and angry-looking, but he insisted he could manage the pain. I brought him coffee and sat on the edge of the couch while Ray went out to check the woodpile. The cabin felt smaller with the 3 of us and the storm howling outside. You did not have to risk your hunt for me, Jordan said quietly. His voice was low and steady. Most people would have kept walking. I shrugged. My dad would say that is what any decent man does. Jordan studied me for a long moment. Your dad sounds like a man with strong opinions. I laughed, but it came out bitter. You have no idea. We talked then. Really talked. Jordan told me about growing up in a small town in Washington state where being different meant you kept your head down or you left. He had left at 18, come out in college, and never looked back. He made it sound simple, but I could hear the scars underneath the words. I spent years hating myself, he said, staring into the fire. Tried dating girls. Prayed it away. Joined every sports team hoping it would fix me. Then one day I just got tired of lying. The freedom on the other side of that fear. There is nothing like it. His words landed in my gut like stones. I wanted to tell him everything. About the nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. About Sarah and how I cared for her but could never feel what I was supposed to feel. About the sermons at church that made me feel like I was already damned. Instead I said, "Must be nice to have it all figured out." Jordan smiled, but it was sad. I do not have it figured out. I just stopped running from it. There is a difference. That afternoon while Ray napped, I helped Jordan change the bandages on his leg. Our hands brushed and neither of us pulled away right away. The touch was brief, but it sent electricity up my arm. When I looked up, Jordan was watching me with an expression I could not name. "You are a good man, Ethan," he said softly. "Whatever you are carrying, you do not have to carry it alone." I stood up too fast, nearly knocking over the water basin. "I will get more wood." Outside, the snow stung my face, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. I had spent years building walls. One conversation with a stranger and those walls were cracking. By evening, the three of us shared a simple meal of canned stew and hard biscuits. Ray told old hunting stories and Jordan listened politely, but his eyes kept finding mine across the table. Every glance felt dangerous and necessary at the same time. Later, when the fire had burned low and Ray had gone to bed, Jordan spoke into the quiet. "I know what it is like to pretend. If you ever want to talk about it, I am here. No judgment." I did not answer. I could not. But for the first time, I did not feel completely alone. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of forced closeness in that small cabin. 3 days of Jordan slowly healing and me slowly unraveling. On the second night, the power went out. We lit oil lamps and played cards to pass the time. Ray won most hands, but he was in a rare good mood telling jokes I had heard 100 times. Jordan laughed at all of them, and I found myself smiling more than I had in months. After Ray turned in Jordan and I stayed up talking by the fire. He asked about my life in town, my job at the construction company, my plans with Sarah. Every question felt like a gentle probe against the armor I wore. "I am supposed to propose to her at Christmas," I admitted finally. The words tasted like ash. "Dad already bought the ring. Mom keeps hinting about grandkids." Jordan was quiet for a long time. "And what do you want, Ethan?" The question hung between us. I stared into the flames until my eyes burned. "I do not know anymore. I used to think I wanted the life they planned for me. House, kids, the whole thing. But lately it feels like I am watching someone else's movie." He shifted closer on the couch, careful of his leg. "You know, it is okay to want something different, even if it scares the hell out of you." Our shoulders touched. The contact was innocent, but it sent my heart racing. I could smell the faint scent of pine and wood smoke on his clothes. When I turned my head, our faces were inches apart. For one suspended moment, I thought about closing the distance. I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. Instead, I stood up abruptly. "I should check the generator." Outside, the wind howled, but it could not drown out the voice in my head screaming that I was a liar and a coward and maybe something worse. The next morning, the storm finally broke. Ray decided we could get Jordan down the mountain if we took it slow. The hike was grueling. Jordan leaned heavily on me for support, and every step brought us physically closer. By the time we reached the truck, my arms ached and my mind was a mess of guilt and longing. We drove Jordan to the small clinic in town. While the doctor examined him, Ray pulled me aside in the waiting room. "That city boy seems decent enough," he said. "But keep your distance, son. People like that, they got different ways. Your dad would not like it." The warning landed like a punch. I nodded, but inside something defiant sparked to life. When Jordan was released with a cast and crutches, he thanked us again. "I will never forget what you did for me. Both of you." He looked at me when he said it. I gave him my number in case he needed anything while he recovered in town. Ray frowned but said nothing. As we drove home that night, the silence in the truck felt heavier than the snow we had just escaped. I stared out at the dark mountains and wondered how one stranger could make my entire future feel like a question instead of an answer. Jordan stayed in Durango for 2 more weeks while his leg healed enough to travel. We texted every day. At first it was simple stuff. "How is the pain? Did the doctor say when you can fly?" Then it became longer conversations about books and music and the places we wanted to see someday. I told myself it was just friendship. But every time my phone lit up with his name, my pulse jumped. Sarah noticed something was off. We had dinner at my parents' house one night and I barely touched my food. Mom asked if I was coming down with something. Dad just looked at me with that disappointed stare he had perfected over the years. After dinner, Sarah and I sat on the porch swing. "You have been distant lately," she said. "Is it work? Or us?" I wanted to tell her the truth. That I cared about her, but I was not in love with her. That I had been performing the role of perfect boyfriend for so long I did not know how to stop. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said I was just tired. The next afternoon, I met Jordan at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. He was using crutches, but moving better. We sat in the corner booth and talked for 3 hours. He told me about the first time he kissed a boy in college and how it felt like coming home. I told him about the youth group retreats where I prayed until my knees bled, asking God to make me normal. "You are normal, Ethan," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "The world around you is what is broken." That was the first time we touched on purpose. His fingers were warm and steady. I did not pull away. 2 days later, we met again, this time at a trailhead outside town. Jordan wanted to test his leg on easy ground. We walked slowly, the forest quiet around us. At one point he stopped and turned to me. "I like you, Ethan. More than I probably should given the circumstances. But I am not going to push. You have to decide what you can live with." The words hung in the cold air. I looked at him, the sunlight catching in his hair, and something inside me finally broke open. I kissed him. It was soft and tentative and over too quickly. But it was the most honest thing I had done in years. When we pulled apart, Jordan smiled like he had been waiting for that moment since the ridge. We kept seeing each other in secret. Stolen hours in my truck parked on back roads. Long talks in his hotel room. Every meeting made me feel more alive and more terrified. Ray called one evening. "Your dad is asking why you have been so distracted." I told him, "You have been helping that city boy." He did not like it much. The warning was clear. I ignored it. The betrayal came on a Tuesday. I had just left Jordan's hotel when my phone rang. It was Ray. His voice was tight. "We need to talk, son. Now." He met me at the job site after hours. Dad was there too, standing beside his truck with his arms crossed. The look on his face told me everything. "Ray saw you," Dad said without preamble. "Kissing that man. Is it true?" I could have lied. I had been lying for years. But standing there in the cold with the smell of sawdust and diesel in the air, I was suddenly exhausted by all of it. "Yes," I said. My voice shook, but I said it again louder. "It is true." Dad's face went red, then white. "I did not raise a faggot. You hear me? You got a good girl waiting on you. A future. And you throw it away for some pervert you met in the woods." The words hit like fists. Ray would not meet my eyes. He had been the one to tell Dad. The man who had taught me to hunt had turned me in. Mom cried when I got home. Sarah called screaming, then sobbing. My sister texted that I was selfish and destroying the family. The church prayer chain lit up with requests for my healing. I packed a bag that night and left. Dad stood in the doorway and told me not to come back until I got right with God. Jordan was waiting at the hotel. When I told him what happened, he held me while I shook. No words. Just steady arms and the quiet promise that I was not alone. We drove to Denver the next morning. I had a cousin there who said I could crash on his couch until I figured things out. Jordan booked a flight back to Seattle but promised he would return as soon as he could. The first weeks were brutal. I got a job on a construction crew in the city. The work was hard and the pay was decent, but every night I lay awake wondering if I had destroyed everything for a feeling I still barely understood. Jordan visited every other weekend. We walked through city parks and talked about the future. Slowly the guilt started to loosen its grip. I found a therapist who did not flinch when I said the word gay. I joined a support group for people who had been rejected by their families. But the pain did not vanish. Some nights I cried for the father who would not answer my calls. Some mornings I woke up angry at Ray for choosing loyalty to my dad over loyalty to me. 6 months later, I stood on a ridge outside Denver watching the sun rise over the mountains. Jordan was beside me, his hand in mine. His leg had healed completely and he had moved to Colorado permanently. We had a small apartment together, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was breathing real air. Mom had started texting again in secret. Small things. How are you eating? Did you get the coat I sent? Dad still would not speak to me, but she said he kept the picture of us from my high school graduation on his desk. Ray sent one message. It said, "I am sorry. I thought I was doing right by your father. Maybe I was wrong." I had not replied yet. Sarah was engaged to someone else. The town gossip said she was happier than she had ever been with me. That one hurt less than I expected. I had lost my family, the church, and the future everyone had planned for me. But I had found something I never knew I was allowed to have. Love that did not ask me to be smaller. Peace that did not require me to hate myself. Jordan squeezed my hand. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah. For the first time I think I really am." The mountains stretched out in front of us, vast and indifferent. They did not care who I loved. They just stood there solid and ancient, reminding me that some things endure. I had paid a terrible price for this freedom. But looking at the man beside me, I knew I would pay it again. Was choosing my own truth over my family's expectations the right decision, or did I betray the very foundations I was raised on?